Welcome to the Sunday, September 19, 2021 service of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tampa. As you've probably noticed, there's been a slight change in our plans today. Rather than coming to you live from our sanctuary on Morris Bridge Road, we are taped. And the reason is, of course, COVID raised its ugly head again, and so we've had a slight change in plans for safety's sake. We are being taped at this time for a later broadcast. But I would like to welcome you to our Sunday service, and let's open with the stone ritual. In our stone ritual, as you know, we have 3 stones which we set in sand. The first stone is for any joys that you've had this week. The second stone is for any sorrows you may have encountered. And the third stone is to set an intention for the coming week. I want to light our chalice today, and I will figuratively light a candle for you. Light our chalice with this quote from Lao Tzu's tongue from the Tao Te Ching, which he has written. And this is a translation by Stephen Mitchell. What is a good man but a bad man's teacher? What is a bad man but a good man's job? If you don't understand this, you will get lost, however intelligent you are. It is the great secret. I want to welcome you this morning to our service, where our guest speaker will be Bill Bly-Miller. Bill Bly-Miller is no stranger to any of us in the community. He has been with us for the last 20 years, very active in our church. He has been, as you probably know, the chair of our Buildings and Grounds Committee, of Adult RE. He's been in the field of finance, in technology, and in special projects. And for years, he was the man behind the curtain in the sound room. And today, not only is he giving our homily, but he's the man behind the camera. Thank you, Bill. He will talk to us today about his unwinding of the Unitarian Universalism, his experiences for the past year. We'll now open with the hymn number 159, This Is My Song.
This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and mine. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, thou God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine.
Greetings, everyone. My name again is Bill Bly-Miller. Ed introduced me very nicely. I'm now doing the reading for reflection. So please center yourself as you wish and Pay attention to these words. There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant, a time to uproot, a time to kill, and a time to heal, and a time to tear down, and a time to build. Time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, a time to dance, a time to scatter stones, and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, and a time to search and a time to give up. A time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time for love, a time for hate, a time for war, a time for peace. Please join me in silence. All right, let's come back together. I was asked by the worship committee to provide a service for you. It is a talk and not a sermon. And that's what I'm going to do. This is my third or fourth time to do this. And these times are spaced about 2 or 3 years apart. That gives everyone an opportunity to forget what I did the last time. So here we go. Today, I want to talk to you about 3 things. I'm going to wind a story around 3 things. Unwinding Unitarian Universalism. I don't know what that means, but it all had U's and was onomatopoetic, so I like that. This little talk this morning comes in 3 parts. The first, of course, is about me and how did I get here? Me. The second part is, where is here exactly? And the third part is, well, what did you learn along the way, Bill? Must have been something learned. So let me start here. I am an atheist. I am part of the humanist atheist wing of the church, if there is such a thing. I've been here for about 20 years, as it said, probably, and have run for about 7 of those or 8 of the years. We had a group called the Secular Humanists and Atheists and Agnostics Group, SHAG, that met and discussed. Early, I was born in Roswell, New Mexico. I don't want you to know that, but I just said it right out loud. My mother and father raised me mostly in a small town in Texas. My father was a lapsed Catholic. My mother was the daughter of a holiness preacher, and neither one of them had much to do with organized religion. My older sister, one of my older sisters, on the other hand, did have a great amount to do with her religion. And so the only religious education I really got, aside from cartoons and that stuff, was that when my old middle sister suggested that my folks send me to vacation Bible school, that it would be good for my soul. Well, I went and had a great time. Vacation Bible school, great stories, Jonah and the whale, Joshua fought the battle of Jericho and the walls came tumbling down. I loved all that stuff. Great stories. Good refreshments, a lot of fun. But they ran into a problem with it. See, this was the summer after my 3rd grade year. And when I was 8 years old, in that 3rd grade, I had a girlfriend, Marcia Voischmeyer. Her dad owned the department store in town. And Marcia and I were always vying with one another for this or that spelling bee, that kind of stuff. I loved Marcia. 8 years old. I asked Marcia if she'd like to go to Sunday school with me because I thought that was the kind of thing a person did. And she said, no, she couldn't do that because she was Jewish and needed to go to temple in Amarillo, which was, you can imagine that. And the 8-year-old in me went, okay, all right, don't need that. But that summer in Vacation Bible School, the folks there tried to convince us that everybody was going to hell, except the people in this small church. The people in the other Baptist church, no, they haven't got a chance either. Certainly the Catholics have no chance, and for God's sake, the Jews don't. Well, what? Marcia is not going to heaven? No, it ain't working. Besides, that was grape juice and not blood. I saw the bottle. I saw the cookies. Just nonsense. I walked home from that Sunday an atheist. By atheist, I said, don't believe there's anything out there. I was the atheist who stood out in high school. He's an atheist. I was never asked to lead the school prayer. But regardless of that flaw, I seem to turn out to be a functional 20th century human being in the Western culture. I went to school, got a job, got a wife, got a family, earned my living with my hands, and wound up in Tampa in the early 1990s working for GTE. I have never been a searcher in that sense. I was always pretty convinced there wasn't anything out there and no use looking for it. My wife, on the other hand, is a searcher, and wherever we've lived, she's managed to go to a church, find a church of some sort that she can go to. After we had children, she was even more interested in going to church. So when we moved here, she went to Presbyterian church. There's a wonderful story that if you ever catch Diana Stevens and my wife together, ask about, because our sons met trick-or-treating on Halloween in the early 1990s. And my wife talked to Diana, and Diana, of course, told her there was a great church up here. If you just go around the corner, you'll see it. Fascinating place. Well, so my wife showed up. And she went to the church for a while and seemed to be happy with it. And I'm happy with that because I don't need the church. Didn't ask for the church, not looking for a church. One day, Harriet, my wife, came in, slapped on the desktop in front of me a cassette tape. And she said, this cassette tape you need to hear. It was a sermon by the Reverend Barbara Child. And it was very important that I hear this for my own good. Now, those of you who've been married for any length of time, you know when your spouse is telling you something for your own good, you pay attention, or at least pretend to pay attention. I listened to the cassette and it was not offensive to an atheist. And I came here and I gradually met people, and took me a long time, took me about almost a year of lurking around before I joined. But I want to tell you the 3 things that stick out that kept me here. One is there was a humanist, atheist fellow named Jack Robinson. And one day, at the end of a speech or a presentation by a fellow who told us that who had written a book about how dark matter was actually the same as the soul. And it was a very fascinating concept. At the end of his presentation, Jack stood up right over here and said, BS. Now, you can expand those words if you want, but I talked to him later and he said, no, I didn't say BS. What I said was, where are your facts, sir? Quite a big difference. But here I saw an interplay of ideas where somebody came with an idea, somebody had the freedom to be able to say, what? Come on, let's talk that over. Okay. Second thing that I remember is that I was coming in still in the lurking period, and I sat down, and again, right over there, a chair away from a man I had not seen before. And I asked him, are you a member? Nah, not a member. Okay. I've been thinking about becoming a member. Why would you do that? He said. Why would you do that? You don't have to be a member. You can come here anytime you want. And I remember sitting and thinking, yeah, but somebody's got to pay for the air conditioning and somebody has to do some of this work. And if I just come here, I'm skimming off the top. That's not right. And I became a member. But another one is the last one that convinced me was the song you just heard earlier. In that song is the verse, but in other lands, the sky is blue. Other people have their land too. That was the first song I had ever heard in the first place I'd ever been that started off patriotic and became universalist. What can I say? I'm moved by song lyrics. Well, that tells you how I got here. But again, second question is, well, where does here? What does all this mean? My first years here, I was very lucky. We had a succession of interim ministers coming through, and the interim ministers often had the job of telling Unitarian Universalist history. And we learned a lot of very interesting things about how things worked. Certainly not everything there is to know, but we found out about the Iowa women's group and variety of folks who were prairie preachers writing out to carry the word, mostly of universalism. And we found out that these two religions were actually heretic sects of Christianity, heretic. Unitarians, we talk about them briefly, have been in existence since 325 in the Council of Nicaea, when they tried to put Christianity all in one little bottle. That Unitarianism means one God, one God. When Unitarianism came to the United States, it went through some changes, and including a period with Emerson and transcendental meditation. And it was really an opening that says that the world is bigger than Christianity. At least that's what it says to me. In the first half of the 20th century, now, the Unitarians steered the UUA Association toward a more humanist approach. The Universalists, on the other hand, are a new church. They were formed here in America in 1774. Universalism is a general idea that is in reaction to Calvinism, which is predestination. This is all. Universalism in its largest concept simply means no, 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 no. Nobody is guaranteed they're going to go anywhere. In fact, either you can be a universalist either if you say there is no hell. How could there be hell? Or if you say, yeah, there's a hell, but you only go there for a little while because God will eventually let you out, because just like the human system of imprisonment, there's a price to pay. Mock's next to me. Both of those sects were facing diminishing membership for a variety of different reasons. One is that the Unitarians were steering off into humanism. Secondly is that more and more religions, Christian religions, were pulling back from hell a little bit. They joined in 1961, poof. And out of the box, they mostly followed the Unitarian philosophy with humanism. Now, I want you to think for a second. We've got two Christian sects, one of which has taken a humanist or a rational or a functional point of view of the world and religion, and one who brings a spiritual connection with the world. Both of those together make Unitarian Universalism, but they don't live comfortably together. And so what we've had from the very beginning is a constant tension between the people who just want the facts, ma'am, and the people who say, I need to feel something. In fact, just to let you know, just a piece of history. We originally had 6 principles. We didn't have the last one. 7. And in those 6 principles, there is not a single metaphor. There is no religious language in those 6 at all. It's all about justice, honor, equity, doing the right thing, but no religion. It is the seventh principle which brings our first metaphor, the web. Now, I'm not against metaphors, I'm an English major, but it's important to keep that in mind. We started off with a set of principles and we are now adjusting those. We've had a constant kind of pressure from the more religious side because were not getting what they thought they should get from their church experience. They would like to have more, from their point of view, it would be greater if we had more religious language, more religious music. And in the early 2000s, we went through a process called, can't remember exactly what it's called now as you think of it, but this is where we introduced religious language back into our services. A very open movement about religious language. And over the last few years, we have seen that the congregations are much more amenable to that kind of language than they were, say, 10 or 15 years ago. My preference, of course, is and was humanism. And some of the language I, of course, find troublesome. Other people have other language they find troublesome. But this is the first place I ever came that was working on balancing rationality and spirituality. You didn't have to come here with a slide rule, and you also didn't have to come here with a holy book. These two basic points of view, rationality and spirituality, are always going to be in tension. And I'm making that point because we're in the middle of another uproar. There are lots of uproars in the history of Unitarian Universalism. And once again, it is primarily on what kind of structure do we want to have. One piece that was very important in the 1961 gathering of these two bodies was that both of these entities were congregational. And by congregational, I mean they made the choices about who their ministers were and what kinds of things they wanted to do. They made that at the church, not at the bishopry, not up in the Vatican, but each individual church had responsibility for its own operation. Now you needed help, and so they said, well, you need help from your congregations around you, not from some central location. And that was one of the things that we, as we got together, that one of the things that is most difficult for us to maintain is how do we set up the problems of an individual church, the things they want to work on, the personality they have, with a national identity or a major position for the group of us who are Unitarian Universalist congregations. So
I found this on the web.
Oh, great. That's it. That's where it's here. We're in this wonderful mess that we're always in, where our ideas are conflicting with one another, but we have a different history here. And that is, we have a history of listening and understanding. What have I learned here? Well, first of all, when I got here, my first learning really was that atheism, which I said was no things are happening, is just as silly as creationism to me. I've got no idea, and I don't think the human mind has any idea about how all this works and what's in the end, and et cetera. So my choice of atheism is a choice. Humans can't really understand this stuff, so you make a choice so you can get along in the world, and mine is still atheism. Second thing I found was that the church is family. I remember I was unchurched, so I didn't quite know that. Church is family. And by that, I mean you've got lots of friends, but you also have odd uncles, strange cousins, busybody aunts, all the other human characteristics that we have exist in a church. It's not perfect. Another thing I learned, I'm going to use a religious word here, we are each other's ministry. We owe each other ministry. We should minister, take care of each other. And here I have to admit some of my most grievous shortcomings. I have not ministered to as many people as I should have. In fact, fortunately for that, there is no police record, but we have agreed to help one another. Of course, a minor point about this place is that I no longer feel the difficulty in telling people I go to church. For years, I couldn't say that, couldn't say those words, but now I go to church. I have experienced moments of pride and joy here, which are almost inexplicable. And all I can tell you is I have come through this 20-year period grateful. And I think if Unitarian Universalists had any one word that they can all agree on, is we're grateful. What an opportunity to be here, to be alive, to see other people. What a wonderful ride. Gratitude. The only possible explanation. We'll skip over the family tiffs, let them go. And in here, I have learned to look deeper. And that sounds kind of funny, but I want to give you an example. Amidst all the copyright issues of what we can say and what we can't say, what we can play, I chose something I thought would just be unassailable. The Christian and Hebrew Holy Book, which is our society's holy book. So I asked for that Ecclesiastes because we're real familiar with it. And it sets up something about things are constantly changing. But I found when I went to look at this, that there are two other sections to this. The first one is all about change. It's this, and there's a time for this, and a time for this, and a time for that. Second section, the poet speaks up and says, you know, I know what a difficult world this is, and how you have to toil, labor to make sure everything is okay in this world, and you don't seem to get much for it. And it also seems to me that, and the word is, God put the world in your heart, but God's making it impossible for you. God has made it impossible for you to understand any of this stuff. You can't understand it. You're not able, and yet you toil and toil. So maybe you could lighten up a little. Oh, but then came the third section, which is full of sin, damnation, unworthiness, awful things, how people are. So the poet has managed to bring everybody into his poem, which is the wonderful poetry at the first, and the second of kind of but God's let you be okay. And then at the end, of course, we're lost in damnation, except, now listen to this. This is the 22nd verse, not the 8th. Wherefore I perceive that there is nothing better than that a man should rejoice in his own works, for that is his portion. For who shall bring him to see what shall be after him? Now that sounds a lot like me. You can't understand it. Put your head down and enjoy yourself a little bit. Rejoice in your own works. Now, I had never knew that was part of that Ecclesiastes 3 section. So look deeper. And I also ask you to look deeper with a closing song we're going to have in just a second, just a minute. Closing song is There Is More Love Somewhere. Beautiful song. It's one of my favorite songs. It lifts me up, amazingly enough. But all its language is about eventually, sometime, getting into a place somewhere where life is good. Sort of a delayed gratification. I know it's about slavery, and I know that's what we're talking about. And I don't mean that delayed gratification the same way I mean putting off eating a candy bar. But we'll wait for our reward. And I kind of see UUs as a different group. We tend to see the reward of life is to be in the here and now, create the beloved community now. So the words of that song make really no sense to me. And yet I'm moved. And yet I'm moved. Reason, spirituality, emotion, here, all caught in an embrace in this place. Thank you for letting me take up your time. Go forth, have a great day, and keep your stick on the ice.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more joy somewhere.
Our offertory today comes to us virtually. We have no basket to pass, but we do ask if you would like to make a contribution to this church, you can do so in two ways. One is you can go on to our website at uutampa.org, scroll down the homepage and you'll see a Donate Now button. Click on it and follow the directions. Or you can send a check to our church at 11400 Morris Bridge Road. I'm going to extinguish our chalice today with this quote from Christopher Hitchens. We may differ on many things, but what we respect is free inquiry, open-mindedness, and the pursuit of the ideas for their own sake. Now, go in peace, stay healthy, be safe until we gather again in community. Goodbye.